Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing. Today we will have a job to do on the BMW X5 F15. This will hold true for a lot of N55 motors, so across BMW lineup, not just for X5. Maybe little changes here and there, but basically what I have to do is if you look down in the front, my oil filter housing is leaking down there. So you can see there's a bunch of oil all around. So we have to open up the oil cooler gasket, which is right here, and then oil cooler and then oil filter housing here to replace both of these gaskets. I ended up getting these gaskets from BMW, the original parts. But now what we have to do is change it. In order to change it, I'm going to describe it and then I'll put a video on fast forward to walk through it. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to open up the entire back, which are these plastic trays that covers your power steering and your air filters on the BMWs. Take that out. Use a T25 torque screw driver to open up 6 bolts back here to open this up. This opens up like I have it here. Then same thing for these pieces. There are 1 screw back here, 1 screw back here. That is a T25, and then back here there is a regular bolt. It's a 10 millimeter. So use either a power socket or use like a manual wrench to open that up. Once you open that up, only thing that you have to be careful is there's a wire clip on here in the back. From here, just remove it and move it out the way. Once you move it out the way, you can take this off without a problem. You just have to be finagle your way out of there. So this comes off. You don't have to take it off. The only reason I'm taking this off is just to have more space, because now what's going to happen is these are T25 6 bolts. You're going to remove your air intake. Yes, I have already removed the cover, which the cover goes in here and the clips on. So once you remove this, you can have this taken off as well. Set it aside, you will have more access. The reason I'm opening all this up is I have to get down here. In order to get down here, I have to remove this air filter box and get to the intake. Once I get to the intake, there are screws I have to get to, because to get the oil filter housing out, there's a screw back there that's hidden. Thank you, BMW, for making this design. A1 for that. So you have to get to, otherwise it's simply bolts up here, and you're done. But no, we have to get to that screw. I want to say it's E12. It's right down there, if you see behind this. So we would have to get to down there. But in order to get to it, some of the housing has to remove. You have to use a 13 millimeter to remove the sport bar that goes from right to the left. But you have to be very careful when you do it, because you don't want to break any of these wiring and the hoses that's running through. Once we have that, we'll take that off. I'm going to try not taking the radiator fan out. Some of the directions talk about taking the radiator fan out. Also, I'm going to do it in 2 pieces. So do the oil cooler first and then the oil gasket, oil filter housing. The reason for that is I'm going to see if I can do it without removing any of the hoses, because I do want to cover and protect as much as I can on the bottom. Another thing to point out here is I waited for my oil change, and once my oil change is due, it's about 5,200 miles. So I'm going to do it at the same time. I'm going to change the oil filter, oil, and then put in the oil additive as well, and then change these things. I did buy a coolant, which is a BMW concentrate. It's 50-50. You got to mix it with distilled water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to use a manual pump and pump out some of the coolant reservoir that has in here as much as possible. And then hopefully I don't have to worry about much of the coolant draining and opening up on the hoses on the bottom, because there's no really real drain for BMW X5. You have to get all the way down at the bottom to the pipe that goes to the water pump and open that up. I honestly do not want to go down that route, because you have to remove the splash shield and the metal plate that's on the bottom. So I'm trying to avoid that and do it this way. And then I'll get the camera on. The parts you need and the tools you need are pretty much out here. So you have your coolant, like I mentioned. I have the oil. You can use any oil that you want to. I have the regular ratchets, and then I have the power tools as well. You do need E1s, E10, E8, and E12s. And you also need like a small ratchet like this or something like this you can pick up at Harbor Freight. The reason is one of the oil filter gasket bolts is on the bottom, and this is the only way we're going to get it to loosen up. With that, I don't have an oil filter wrench, the 86 millimeter. I have just this. I'm going to use this to open it up. I don't tighten it. Oil filter, I believe it's a 23 or 24 Newton meters, so it's just basically hand tight and you stop. I did get this to remove fluid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the camera situated and basically start working on making sure I can get to it before I drain the oil, because I don't want to drain the oil. God forbid if there's something wrong and I cannot get to it. So stay tuned. Thank you. Okay, so in here, what I'm doing is I'm taking off the hood release cable from the bar, and then also opening up the bar with the 13 millimeter sockets, and now removing the air lines, which is the AC lines. What I found the best way to do is if you push down and then outwards towards the car, they come out. I did snap one of them, the clips, so that's why just a pointer that push down and then push outwards, they come off. They're very brittle because of depending on how hard your plastic is. Once you get them out, then you can move them a little bit higher up and get some more space and going. To open up the air box, there's the T25 bolts, and there are 3 grommets that hold the air box, but behind the air box towards the steering wheel, there are 3 wires which are pretty much on a clip, on a rubber clip. So make sure you remove the rubber clip upwards so they come off of the hook, and then you can remove the air box. Do not yank the air box off because it will ruin your wiring. No, one screw and one screw. Everything else is a bolt. Bolt, 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 and a bolt all the way in the back and a bolt in the here. The easiest way to get here and behind is just undo this wiring, thereby T25s on both sides here and the other side on the intake side of the passenger side. Move them out of the way, and you'll see all the way back there, there's a bolt back there. See, there's a bolt all the way back there. That's the bolt we have to remove from there. So you will have 5 bolts that come out of here and 2 long screws, which are right here in the front. Once you do this, you'll notice, sorry for all the shaking, this comes off. But I'm not removing it because what I'm going to do now is loosen this up and then loosen the bolt down and drain the oil. Once I drain the oil, then I'll come back, open this up, and start opening the oil filter housing and remove coolant out of here as well, and then get to the actual work of doing this. So stay tuned. I'll leave the oil bolt and everything else out of here because we don't need to. I'll link it up below the video for how to change oil, which is pretty basic. You can even do other videos on YouTube as well. Stay tuned. So in order to take off the oil cooler gasket, you will need E12. Take out the top 2 screws, which are easier to get to. Once you do those, you need to work on the bottom one, which is right in the center towards the left of the oil cooler. Put a shorter extension on there so you can get your ratchet in there and take it off, and use your hand to feel for it because it does take some time to come off. Once this comes off, be very careful because depending on how much coolant you drained or didn't drain, it will come off. I ended up draining, taking everything out of the coolant reservoirs. My coolant reservoir is completely empty at this time. And also don't do this on a hot car. Coolant might be hot, so make sure the car and the oil is cool. Once it does come off, just make sure very carefully wrap it in a towel just in case if it's leaking. You don't want to drop anything on your serpentine belt. Also, the pipe that comes off the oil cooler has a attachment in the hook, so just unhook it from there so you can get some more room to move the oil cooler itself. Once you do that, you'll see me using a pick tool and to get it off. If it's very brittle and breaks, then you have to do it in multiple pieces, but mine was I was able to get it off in one piece. It just takes some time. Take one area or a couple areas and work on it, and just yank it, pull it off with a pick tool. Don't do anything else. And then keep in mind, do not clean, spray a brake cleaner directly in any of the holes for either oil cooler or oil filter. You don't want to get anything in there. Work around it or spray it on the rag and then clean it that way. That's what I did. For me, it was hard to get in here, and I didn't want to strip this bolt down here, which is the oil filter housing. So I ended up removing a 10 millimeter bolt from here, what you're looking at underneath this thing right here, and underneath here. Basically, this is the pipe. It's covered right now. So I removed the 10 millimeter bolt so I can put a socket E12 in here and open it. If you can do that, there's not that much oil, nothing came out of here. So now I'm just using the ratchet using this wrench to open it, but use a E12 socket to get through it. You don't want to strip it unless you're getting brand new bolts, but still, if you strip it and it doesn't come out, then you're stuck. So this is the only painful one. And then basically this one on top, I was able to open it with this as well, or you can use E12. And then once you move your intake manifold, you will see I have loosened this one as well. And I'll just put the socket on there to get it out. But for now, I'm just trying to play with this and carefully open this up. So take your time opening all these three up. All three of them are different. This is the shortest. I'll check again, but this is the longest, and this is the one back there is the second shortest. So if this is like 2 inches, this is 3.5 inches, and this is like 1.5 inches. You cannot interchange them. They do not interchange, so do not try to interchange them at all either. Okay. So use a pick tool to get the oil filter gasket out. This was much easier for me to get out versus the other one. Still, they were hard. And then use like a carb cleaner or a brake cleaner with rags to clean it. Just make sure do not spray anything inside of the holes that uses either oil or coolant lines. And then any of the areas you want to clean, you can clean it with a carb cleaner if it's not going inside. But don't directly spray anything, and then you don't have to use anything rough to clean either this or the main housing, because you don't want to use a sandpaper or anything like that. Just a rag is more than enough. So I inserted a new gasket. I'll link it down below, the BMW original part. I ended up getting BMW ones. You can get aftermarket ones, the BMW ECS or FCP Euro cells and so forth. But I ended up getting this one. Take a brake cleaner, carb cleaner, clean this, clean as much as you can. Do not get inside. As you can see in the video, I did the outside only. I did not do anything inside so far. And then basically put the new one in. This only goes in one way. You cannot flip around and do vice versa. Once you do it, basically put it back in. And this is what I was talking about earlier. These are the 3 bolts. So if you see, the longest one goes up top. The second longest one is the one that goes in the back for this pain in the butt you have to open up the intake manifold for. And the smallest one goes all the way in the back. Make sure when you're opening, loosen all 3 and then do it. Same thing when you're tightening, don't tighten one up really fast, and then tighten slowly all 3 at a time. So I'm going to put the camera down and get these going in. So what you can do to line stuff up, put the top you notice goes all the way down here. That's why it's the longest one. And I'll link all the torque specs on here below. I believe these are 17 Newton meter, but I'll put them down below. Again, do not tighten them too much. You need to make sure they're hand tightened first. Okay guys, so basically I've packed everything up. I didn't make the video for putting everything back together. Basically the same way how you're gonna unscrew it, screw it back on. The bottom piece, this goes first, the side piece goes, then the middle piece goes, the top piece goes. The only thing I'm gonna recommend here is I did not end up taking the radiator fan out. I left it alone. I drained coolant from here. Some coolant came from the oil cooler. I filled up about 3.5 quarts in here already. I'm gonna start the car and see how it is. One of the other things that I did, I made a mistake, I'll be honest to it. In my intake tube, which is here, I was trying to put this on and I was using, it wasn't going on, so I ended up using a trim tool that ended up sliding all the way down. So I had to spend some time in taking that out of the inlet pipe which goes into the turbo. So that was my mistake, but I ended up taking it out, no problems, everything is good, car runs. I'm gonna reset the oil light inside anyways, but before I do that, just wanted to comment on the job itself. You don't have to remove everything. A lot of video tells you. You can if you want to. Like I said, I didn't do it. These are my old gaskets that you saw me taking out. They're pretty worn out, pretty hard. The new ones were very soft. The job is very easy. It just take your time opening up all the bolts for your intake manifold, as there are 2 screws and 5 bolts, and the 5th one is all the way in the back. And that's only the painful one. Otherwise, it's not a bad thing to do. The actual job is only 6 bolts. I didn't have to change my serpentine belt. The belt was good. I left it alone. Hopefully this helps. I will try to fast forward some of the videos and so forth. Thank you guys for liking, subscribing, watching. Stay tuned.